Hey guys, and welcome back to my channel, Panda Crafts. In this video, I'm going to be sharing 3 different Christmas decor DIYs using Dollar Tree items. So if you like this video, please don't forget to give me a thumbs up. It helps me out a lot. And if you aren't currently subscribed, you can do so at any time by pressing that little play button down in the bottom right hand corner. So let's go ahead and start crafting. This first DIY was inspired by this Santa mailbox that is regularly $100 at Hobby Lobby, but it's 50% off right now, which I still think is crazy. So I thought I would attempt to make my own using a Dollar Tree plunger. So the first thing I did was actually unscrew that wood piece from the plunger and turn it over because I'm going to end up using that flat edge to glue down the mailbox. So while it was in the plunger position, I just went ahead and painted it. And I mixed 2 different acrylic paints. I used bright red and flag red to get kind of like this classic vintage red. Next, I took this white chalk paint from Walmart and I actually had to primer this Dollar Tree mailbox with the white chalk paint because I tried to use the red paint right off the bat and it was not covering. You could still see through and see all those images. So I went ahead and just primered this whole thing with that chalk white paint and then went back over it once it was dry with the 2 red colors. Next, it was time to add the word Santa Mail onto the mailbox. So I actually used these rub-on transfers that I got from the Dollar Tree. And I just cut out the words Santa Mail, and then I rubbed these on with a butter knife. I've also heard that using a popsicle stick works very well as well. I just couldn't find one at the moment. But I really liked how these turned out, and this is my first time trying these rub-on transfers and they worked really well. You could also use stickers if you don't have these. I just wanted a more permanent solution for this DIY. Next, I take my E6000 and add a generous glob to the top of that plunger and then go over that with my glue gun, and that's going to make sure that I have a quick setting bond with my hot glue while the E6000 dries. Next, I centered my mailbox as much as possible, and there was a lot of glue dripping down, but that's okay because I'm going to end up covering this up. You just really want to make sure that you have it centered as much as possible and hold it down for a little bit until that hot glue dries. So I'm just going to interrupt this little voiceover real quick just to share that my husband actually put a little thumbtack down inside through the mailbox and into the plunger. And that's just to keep it held down while the glue is drying. It kept falling off. I think that the hot glue kind of just morphed into the E6000 and it just wasn't setting. So he had the brilliant idea of putting a thumbtack in to secure it while that glue is drying. So after my glue had dried, I had noticed that the mailbox actually leaned a little bit forward, but that's okay as long as it was completely dry and it wasn't moving. And I actually dropped this thing on the floor and it didn't break or move. So as long as you have it how you like it, I actually didn't mind it leaning forward. I thought it added a little bit more charm. So right here, I'm just adding a little bow, a buffalo check bow that I made. And you guys, I can't even tell you how I made this bow. I am not a bow maker. I struggle at making bows. I need to go watch some tutorials. I kind of just like threw this thing together. So I'm just hot gluing some bits and pieces down. I have a lot of this greenery from the Dollar Tree. Some I got this year, some I've purchased in previous years. So I'm just going around and hot gluing that underneath the mailbox to kind of hide where the price tag was and to hide that hot glue mess that's going on, and just wrapping it and adding layers of greenery till I get the effect that I want. And that's it. I think this project turned out so cute for being just under $8. And I think the plunger base provided the perfect support, and all you need to do is cover it up with like a little blanket of snow or a little tree skirt, and you have this cute little Santa mailbox. So this next DIY was actually inspired by a DIY that I did last year for Christmas using another Dollar Tree Christmas bag, and I'm just going to actually be reusing this Dollar Tree frame that I used in another DIY, a farmhouse DIY that I did. And this is an 11 by 14 frame that I have already painted. So I am just gonna go ahead and take out the piece of placemat that is in it, and I'm going to be using that cardboard insert to trace around the image that I'm going to cut out with the bag. But before I do that, I go ahead and just cut out one side of the bag, and it doesn't matter which side for this bag because they're both exactly the same. Sometimes you'll have a Dollar Tree bag that has a glitter side and a flat matte side. In this instance, the bag was exactly the same, so I'm just cutting it out right here. After I've done my rough cut, I decide which elements of the bag are most important because I will have to trim this down further after I measure it. So I go ahead and just take my pencil once I've decided exactly what I want in the picture, and then I just go around that and trace out a rectangle and then cut it out. Next, it's time to figure out and plot where I wanted my lights to be. So I am using this LED light set in the yellow because I figured those would look best in the windows, and they come with 10 little lights. So looking at this picture, there are 5 little windows, and so I just need to flip it over, and there is one lamp post that I definitely want the lights to shine through. So that's what I'm doing. I'm just turning it over and kind of lifting it up a little to see through it and plotting where I want those little lights to shine through. And so now it was just time to play connect the dots with the string lights. So I ended up just taking the end of the light string and then starting at one end in my first point and then securing that down with just some Scotch tape. And then it was just connecting to the next little point and the next little point and so on. And you'll see I actually had to go back and kind of refigure out a new path because sometimes my next light wasn't reaching the next point. So I kind of had to go back and play with it and figure out the correct path to take for my little string lights. And the last thing I did was just leave that battery pack hanging out so I could tape it to the back of this picture so I could easily turn it on and off. And I just love how this project turned out. It only cost me $2 to make, but if you want to recreate it, it would only cost you $3 in Dollar Tree supplies. And it's so simple to make. It only took me about 10 minutes to create this, and that was it. Super easy, so I hope you guys enjoy this DIY. This last Christmas DIY is probably my favorite DIY of all time that I've ever done. So right here, I am just taking some black chalk paint and painting over this sign. And I used way too much paint there in the beginning, but I end up actually putting some of it back. But you are just going to want to coat one of these decorative, I guess, blocks signs from the Dollar Tree and wait for that to dry. I used these bamboo skewers that I actually found in like the barbecue section of Dollar Tree during the summertime, but you can use any sort of wooden dowels that Dollar Tree also sells. And I just cut them at like different lengths to kind of make this effect like the reindeer were flying up. Next, it was time to drill holes to hold the wooden dowels. But before I did that, I went ahead and figured out how deep I wanted those holes to go. And a little trick that my husband actually taught me when you're measuring stuff like this and trying to figure out how deep you want to drill into something, you can actually use a little piece of Scotch tape as a guide so that you don't go deeper than that's the bottom of that Scotch tape when you're drilling. Next, using my pencil, I just marked 5 little points where I wanted to drill, and I didn't use a ruler or anything to evenly space these apart. I kind of just eyeballed it. You could definitely use a ruler if you want. Next, I started drilling those 5 holes, making sure to add a generous amount of pressure and slowly start drilling and then stopping at the top of that tape. And I forgot to mention that you also want to choose a drill bit that is either the same diameter or even a little bit bigger than the wooden dowels that you will be using. Next, I just took those wooden skewers or dowels and I arranged them from smallest to tallest. And then once I figured that out, I just went ahead and added a little dab of wood glue to each hole and then placed those little skewers in there again. Next, I took that same black chalk paint and a makeup sponge and I painted the little wooden sticks, and I figured it would be easier to do it this way rather than them laying down and getting all messy. So I highly recommend painting them when they are standing up. For this next part, I highly recommend you have a good brand of hot glue. It can make the world of difference. I was using some cheap hot glue that I've never used before and it was giving me such a hard time. I highly recommend the Gorilla Glue brand. It has worked for me so well, and I ran out and I decided to use this cheap brand, and it was just not working how I wanted it to. It ended up working, it just took a little bit more effort than I'm used to. But as you can see here, I'm just using those little Dollar Tree deer ornaments, and I actually tried to take off their little bows, but noticed that it took off a huge chunk of glitter, and I didn't like that, so I just went ahead and glued that back on. And the first deer that I actually glued on didn't give me any problems at all. I must have gotten the angle exactly right for this very temperamental glue. I don't know what was going on, but I kind of glued him at an angle and to where the little skewer was kind of going diagonal to his neck, and that's how I attempted the rest of the deer, but the glue was just again giving me so many problems, so can't recommend the Gorilla Glue hot glue enough. And the next thing I did was I used this little sleigh ornament that I picked up from the Dollar Tree last year, and then this little 12-pack of little Christmas present ornaments, and I just ended up hot gluing a few of those presents inside the sleigh to make it look like the reindeer were delivering presents. I ended up trimming down the last wooden dowel that the sled was going to sit on because I knew it was such a weird shape that the hot glue was not going to stick to it how I wanted it to. So I just trimmed it down until it sat on top basically, and then just added a little bit of hot glue to that. Next, I used some of this baker's twine as kind of like their reins. And I really wanted to use some like twine, like some jute twine, but I didn't have any on hand, so I just used what I had. And I started off by kind of tying a little bit to the sled and then going around each of the reindeer's necks, kind of trying to leave a tiny little bit of slack, and then going around the front side after I go around each one, and then kind of hot gluing a little piece to make it look like the reins are kind of dangling, like they have a little bit of slack, if that makes sense. And the very last thing I did was use this Dollar Tree garland, and I kind of just started off in the back and hot glued one end to the back and just started intertwining this garland in between each of the little wooden dowels to make it all look like one big cohesive piece, and trying to hide the spots where the wood glue had come out of the holes. And then I decided to add just a little bit more to this by adding those presents, the leftover presents from that pack that I was using to fill the sleigh. And I think it all just turned out so cute. And honestly, this is way better than I had planned in my head. And it was a hot mess to make, but I'm really happy I just stuck with it and used what I had and didn't give up, because I made this for under $9, and I'm super proud of how it turned out. And so I hope these DIY tutorials inspire you guys to create some of your own Christmas decor and maybe change things up or keep them the same. I would love to see your creations. Tag me on my Instagram. I'll leave that up on the screen for you guys. I would love to see what you guys create. If you try to remake these, let me know. I want to see. And thank you guys so much for watching. Until my next video, I hope you guys have a wonderful week. Don't forget to hit the like button if you did enjoy these videos. And if you haven't subscribed, I'd love to have you as part of my YouTube family. Thanks for watching. Bye.